to get the most out of my iPhone camera and take the best photos I can. In this video, I'm going to take you through the settings I use to capture the most amazing photos and how you can take your photos to the next level. Now, these settings may not be applicable if you have an older iPhone, but it will still be useful if you have anything on from an iPhone 13. I'm currently using the iPhone 13 Pro Max and it's still fantastic to this day. So let's get right into it. Starting with the settings. If you're unsure on where to change this, navigate to the settings app. You can simply do this by pulling down and typing in settings. From there, you can scroll down and press camera. We'll start up the top at record video. Once we click in here, I always have mine set to 4K at 30 FPS. If you want the more kind of movie look, you'd go for 24 FPS. And if you want it really smooth, which I do sometimes to be fair, I'll select 4K at 60 FPS. From there, I have show PAL formats turned off and I have enhanced stabilization turned on. You can pretty much copy what I have here. The only thing I have is lock white balance at the very bottom. Everything else is off. Moving on to slow-mo. Look, I just leave that at 1080p at 240 FPS. And cinematic, I have 4K at 30 FPS. Here's where we get to the really important settings when it comes to taking great quality images, and that's in formats. So, first of all, you have camera capture, and you have two options. You have either high efficiency or most compatible. It says here to reduce file size, capture photos and videos in the high efficiency HEIF or HEVC format, and the most compatible. I always leave it on high efficiency, mainly because if you're doing slow motion as well, or HDR video, you will need that setting ticked. Where it really is important here is under the photo capture settings. So you have Pro RAW and resolution control. I would turn that on, and your Pro default, you can have HEIF Max up to 48 megapixel, Pro RAW at 12 megapixel, or Pro RAW Max up to 48 megapixel. I select up to 48 megapixel, and when we jump in the camera app later on, I'll show you how you can change that on the fly if you don't want crazy file sizes. From there, down the bottom, I also have Apple ProRes video turned on. You can kind of decide yourself if you want huge video files, and if you're okay with that, switch it on. In preserve settings, these are some interesting settings. Essentially what this will do is if you have the camera app open and you swipe out of it for whatever reason, once you go back in there, it will stay on whichever tab you're on. So if you're on video, if you're on slow-mo, it will stay on, so I keep that on. And apart from that, you can just copy the photos here. There's nothing crazy, nothing really super useful in here, but yeah, I keep it there. So once you have those settings, you're really ready to take those Pro RAW images and start kickstarting those amazing photos. Some things that really help me are having a grid and having a level. So I've selected those options as both on, as you can see here, and I'd recommend you do the same. It may obscure your initial image when you're taking it in the camera app. However, when you're trying to line up the corners of buildings and you're trying to line up a point of interest, it's super useful. I have mirror front of camera taken on. This is just so you don't look funny when you're taking kind of selfies on your phone. It will actually keep your face looking half normal, so I leave that on, but it's not important when you're talking about using the back camera for photos. Down at the bottom here, I have prioritize faster shooting turned on. I also have lens correction and macro control both turned on. So what lens correction does, as it says on the tin literally right below it, you can read correct lens distortion on the front and ultra wide cameras. And then macro control is just essentially showing the camera control for automatically switching to the ultra wide camera to capture more macro photos and videos. If you're trying to get really small objects, it's really useful here. Okay, now that we have our settings done, you can navigate to your camera app. And once you pull up your camera app, obviously you're greeted with, it can be quite intimidating for new users who don't really know Pro Max, the different symbols, what they mean. So let's kind of talk through it. So up the top left, you have your flash symbol. I always leave that off. It's rare that I ever use flash. Beside that is your night mode. Obviously, it's a dark table, so that's why the night mode's showing up. Here's something that some people don't know. If you swipe up, you get the other option. There's also a wee arrow up the top that you can press to do the same thing. And the second one is your night mode. If you want to take a long exposure night shot, you would scroll over here, and normally it would say 10 seconds, depending on how dark you can make. I'm trying to just make it, yeah, so you can see it's 10 seconds there. That will vary depending on how dark the subject matter is, up to 10 seconds, potentially up to 30 seconds, depending on what phone you're using and what kind of dark image you're trying to capture. But apart from that, up the top right, you have your Pro Max. So once you enable that by tapping it, you will now be taking 48 megapixel, super high quality images, which actually strip back the Apple pre-made renders that they put on their photos and will allow you to kind of manipulate that in post-editing in something like the photo app or even something like Lightroom later on down the line. With that said, if you hold on RAW Max, it will show you all of the other options that you've seen in settings there earlier on. So you can switch it to RAW 12, which is only 12 megapixel. It would reduce the file size if that's something you care about. And also HEIF Max would just give you like super high quality, essentially similar to JPEG, but yeah, again, reducing that file size. Beside RAW Max, you also have your kind of live photo setting. I turn this off. I don't like it. Yeah, I just don't like it. Some people do like it. Some people like to go back and take a photo out of it. But for me, I don't use it, so I'll leave it out. Swiping up into your sub menu here, you have a load of other options. You can kind of change the exposure on the fly. I normally leave it at 0. You can have a timer if you're getting some sort of group photo, or you can actually use one of Apple's like pre-made visual for when you're actually or filter when you're actually taking the photo, which is pretty cool. Apple also do have their own kind of presets in settings, but I wouldn't really recommend using them, although they are pretty good. I just prefer to go and edit that in post, because sometimes you'll change your mind and you'd like the image to look a little bit different, and if you already have a pre-made filter on it, it's going to be harder to get the look that you're going for. So once you have the image that you've kind of taken on your phone, there are two ways to kind of bring it to the next level. One is by using the internal editing built in within the iPhone. So you press edit here and it brings you right into essentially all these settings you can manipulate. Now this image is already edited on Lightroom, but I'm just going to show you anyway, just as the demonstration. So you can hit auto and look, Apple nearly brings that to another level again. So I was happy with the original render, but they're bringing it again to the next level, and you can tap on it to see the original. And if you're not happy with that, you can go through and further change all these different settings. And to be honest with you, I find this fantastic. You know, a few years ago, you never would have touched this kind of setting or this feature within Apple. It just wasn't up to scratch, but now it's just brilliant. You basically have everything you need here in that you would get in Lightroom. And yeah, look, I use it all the time, especially when I'm out and about and don't have access to either, if I don't have the Lightroom app installed, or if I don't have my laptop or Mac Mini with me, I always just use the photo app, and it's produced some fantastic quality, I have to say, so I'd recommend giving it a try. One thing that I think people should really use a lot more of, and I had to do this in this image actually in Lightroom, and that is making sure your shots are straight. So there's nothing worse than, look, if we just tilt this slightly even out of the way, it's still a lovely image, but you just don't get the same feeling as if it was straight. So what you can do is go into crop, and you can literally just turn the axis of the photo and it auto crops for you. Look, it's a fantastic feature, and the same for vertical. So look, we could have it like more imposing or more top down, and it will do that for us. You can also do it horizontally, and I just think that is such a game changer for those of you who just want to get that extra bit out of your photos and square them off. Lastly, we also have filters built into the app here, the Photos app. And look, even that filter there is quite nice. It's called Dramatic. Yeah, like that brings that photo nearly to another level as well. Completely different feeling. And you have your black and white. You also have Dramatic Warm. That's quite nice as well. Yeah, there's a ton of different kind of built-in features within the Apple Photos app. But to take that a step further, and if you're really getting into your photography, I recommend you download something like Lightroom. I might do another video on Lightroom, but essentially you can import all of your photos and apply what's called a preset. Now, I don't have any presets available at the moment, but a lot of other creators create presets and sell them or give them away for free, and you can essentially like batch apply those presets to your photos, or go through and customize your own preset and set that to all your photos if you want a particular feel. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in some fantastic wallpapers that you would have seen in this video to really change up the look of your device, check them out in the description below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.